Mark was a young photographer, always on the lookout for abandoned places to capture through his lens. He had heard rumors about an old, deserted house on the outskirts of town, known as House Number 13. The stories claimed that the house was cursed, and anyone who entered it never returned. But Mark, drawn by the thrill of adventure, decided to visit the house and take some unique photos. On a cold, foggy Friday, Mark set out for house number 13. As he approached the house, he noticed that even the trees around it were withered and lifeless, as if all traces of life had been sucked out of the area. With cautious steps, Mark entered the house. Inside, it was dark and damp, with walls covered in faded children's drawings and stains of dried blood. His curiosity overtook his fear as he began snapping photos. The further he ventured into the house, the more he felt that something or someone was watching him. He could hear faint rustling sounds coming from other rooms, and shadows seemed to flicker in the corners of his vision. Mark tried to ignore these unsettling sensations and continued taking pictures, but suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. When he turned around, there was nothing there. Yet he could feel the breath of someone or something on the back of his neck. Panicked, Mark bolted out of the room and down the hallway, heading for the exit. The house seemed determined not to let him leave. Doors and windows slammed shut, trapping him in the darkness. As he desperately searched for a way out, he noticed one of the photos he had just taken. It showed a woman standing behind him at the exact moment he had snapped the picture. Mark stared at the photo in horror, but the woman was nowhere to be found. He tried to escape, but the house began to change around him. The walls seemed to close in, and the rooms plunged into deeper darkness. The more he struggled to find an exit, the more the house seemed to engulf him. Finally, Mark stumbled into the attic, the only place where a faint light still streamed in through a small, dusty window. Trembling, he made his way to the window, but suddenly, he heard a rough whisper behind him. When he turned around, he came face to face with the woman from the photograph. Her eyes were hollow, her expression blank, as she stared into Mark's soul. Mark was paralyzed with fear, unable to move. Slowly, she approached him, her eyes never leaving his as she whispered, "You'll be one of us." In a final desperate attempt to escape, Mark lunged for the window, but she pulled him into the darkness. The next morning, when people came looking for Mark, all they found was his camera, filled with photos of the house and that woman with empty eyes. But of Mark, there was no trace. In a small village along the old road, there was a house that everyone feared. It had been abandoned for years, and no one dared to go near it. But when a new family moved to the village, they decided to make this house their home, dismissing the terrifying rumors. The Turner family quickly renovated the house and moved in. But from the very first night, strange and eerie events began. Heavy footsteps echoed through the dark hallways, and faint whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, robbing them of sleep. After a few days, Jim, the father, decided to go down to the basement to investigate the source of the noises. While searching, he discovered an old box filled with yellowed letters and a small diary. The diary recounted the story of a family who had once lived in the house and had mysteriously disappeared. With each page Jim read, he became more convinced that the spirits of that family were still present in the house. The next night, the sounds intensified. Doors began to open and close by themselves. The Turner family, paralyzed with fear, couldn't escape the house. Suddenly, the spirit of the mother from the old family appeared before them, telling them that the only way to break the curse was to burn the box of letters and the diary. Jim reluctantly took the box to the yard and set it on fire. Instantly, all the noises stopped and peace returned to the house. But as they re-entered the house, they noticed that the spirit of the mother was still standing by the fireplace, smiling at them. There was an old house perched on a high hill that locals warned everyone to stay away from. They said that anyone who entered it never came back. But a group of friends decided to defy this old taboo and uncover the secret of the haunted house. It was Friday night when the group of four arrived at the house. The building was old and decrepit, its walls covered in dried vines. Michael, the group's leader, nervously opened the front door, and they all stepped inside. The beam of their flashlights barely penetrated the thick darkness within the house. As soon as they entered the living room, a faint whisper could be heard from the corner of the room. Lucy, always the skeptic, said, "It's just the wind. Don't worry." But the look on her friends' faces showed they had heard the sound too. Suddenly, their flashlights flickered out, plunging the room into total darkness. A child's laughter echoed from upstairs. Michael, his voice trembling, said, "We need to leave, right now." While trying to escape, Lucy noticed a hidden door leading to the basement. They opened it and descended the dark staircase. In the basement, they found a metal box containing the remains of a child. Next to the remains was a letter detailing the tragic death of the child. As Michael read the letter, the child's laughter was heard again, and the flashlights flickered back on. But this time, the child's ghost appeared before them, its eyes burning with anger and revenge. They quickly closed the box and tried to run, but the doors slammed shut on their own, leaving them trapped inside. In the end, Michael broke the door with a piece of wood, and they managed to escape the house. But as they reached the bottom of the hill, the house mysteriously vanished, as if it had never existed. In a small town, there was an old building with an apartment that was always vacant, apartment number 7. It was said to be cursed, and anyone who lived there would mysteriously disappear. One day, a young woman named Alice, looking to escape her past, decided to move in. Alice, having just ended a tumultuous relationship, was searching for a place where she could leave her past behind. She purchased apartment number 7 at a surprisingly low price and moved in immediately. But from the first night, she began to have terrifying dreams about the apartment's past. On the third night, Alice heard the sound of a woman crying in the kitchen. She woke up in a cold sweat and cautiously approached the sound. In the kitchen, a shadowy figure of a woman was standing, slowly turning towards her. The woman's face was full of pain and sorrow, and in a trembling voice, she said, "Why did you come here?" Alice, terrified, backed away and locked the door, but the crying sound continued to echo throughout the house. The next night, Alice decided to leave the apartment. But when she opened the front door, she found herself walking into the same apartment. No matter how many times she tried to leave, the door always led her back inside. Desperate, she reached for the old journal she found in one of the drawers and began reading its cursed contents. In a last attempt to break the curse, Alice burned the journal. As the flames consumed the pages, the crying and whispers stopped. The front door finally opened to the outside world, and Alice ran as fast as she could, never looking back. On the outskirts of a small town, there was an old farmhouse that everyone avoided. It was said to be cursed by the spirits of the farmers who had once lived there. When a young family moved into the farmhouse, they quickly discovered that the stories were more than just legends. The Wilson family moved to the farmhouse for a fresh start. John, the father, eagerly began repairing the house, while his wife Mary and their young son Tom explored the surroundings. But from the very first day, Mary felt like they were always being watched. One night, Tom suddenly woke up and said he heard whispers coming from the basement. John, thinking it was just a child's imagination, went with him to the basement to calm him down. But when they reached the basement, the whispers became clear and distinct. In the corner of the basement, John found an old box filled with documents and papers belonging to the farm's previous owners. One of the papers was a letter from a farmer to his wife, mentioning a curse that had been placed on the farm. Mary, now deeply concerned, began researching the history of the farm and discovered that several families had mysteriously vanished from the property. One night, as a fierce wind howled outside, Mary heard the whispers again, this time from outside the house. When she stepped outside, she saw the ghostly figures of the old farmers appearing in the mist, warning her that they must leave immediately. Mary rushed inside and woke John. They decided to leave that night, but when they reached their car, they found the tires had been slashed. They had no choice but to spend the night in the house. Throughout the night, terrifying sounds and visions haunted the farmhouse, making it clear that the spirits were not at peace. At dawn, everything suddenly became quiet, and the family managed to leave the farm. When they returned to town and told others about their experiences, they learned that the farmhouse had mysteriously collapsed that same night,